This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Hey folks, Steve Azar here. Welcome to Resonance with my pals via Mississippi, me, via Oregon, Randy Harrington, via South Dakota, Mike the Monk Guy Farrell. Grateful for you guys tuning in to another episode. We're going to dig into a lot of stuff that's in the news this week, a lot of stuff going on in our lives, probably going on in yours as well. I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Well, hey guys, good to be back. Yeah, we're going to talk about some stuff that's happened not only locally here in Sioux Falls, but certainly nationally as well. We probably all saw the news last week that Starbucks announced the closing of 400 of its stores. And it was interesting to me. I'm a Starbucks fan and have been for many, many years. And it's interesting to me the way that it was handled. And when I showed up at the store on Thursday morning, there was a letter taped to the front door talking about the store closing at the end of the week. And I've been going to this store every morning, or almost every morning, for at least 4 years since they opened. And so I know the employees and the manager really well, and I don't even have to order my coffee anymore in the morning. They've got it sitting there waiting for me. And so I went in, and you could tell they were all very, very bummed out and down. And as I kind of talked to them, I talked about, well, what kind of notice did you guys get? And they got no notice. They got, the announcement came out the night before. This is on a Thursday morning. They're closing on Saturday. Saturday is their last day. And to add to that, Starbucks had said they were going to try and get them spots in other stores, but they were not going to tell them anything until Sunday, the day after the store closed. So, so what I want to talk about this week is the human toll of decisions that are made by leaders, especially financial decisions that are made by leaders. And one of the other stories that I'll share that also happened in the last 2 weeks is that our Catholic school that my grandchildren go to, that our family has gone to for 3 generations, it was announced that they were going to close that school. And without any notice, without any discussion with parents, with staff, any of those kinds of things. And all of a sudden it was just they're closing at the end of the year. And needless to say, a lot of people, there was a firestorm that was created because of it. And now they've kind of stepped back and they're allowing some input and that kind of thing. But, this idea of making these financial decisions without transparency, without collaboration, without empathy, I think is a real, and we see this in corporate America all the time. We see this in leaders doing this all the time. And so I want to kind of unpack that idea today of how leaders can make these decisions and do it without taking a human toll.
Sure.
Or at least softening the blow to their people. So with that, Randy, I'm going to kick it over to you because I know you've got all kinds of good ideas on this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very juicy topic, and it's one that I think we can begin by simply saying that awareness that these decisions have big impacts is in and of itself a thing. When you're in the boardroom or you're in the C-suite, you can really feel completely just detached from the reality that you're actually controlling and supporting. And I think that's one of the big complaints about government. Oh, government workers are just out there being government workers, and they don't really know what's going on. They don't know how we do things in our state or whatever. And I think there's some truth to that. We can just lose sight of what we're actually all about, what we're actually trying to do. And so guess what? That gets to the importance of those big words that nobody ever pays any attention to, like mission, vision, values. Blah, 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 right? That's the way most of us, when we think about going to a strategic planning process, it's like, oh God, we're going to talk about the mission statement again. And we're going to spend 2 hours wordsmithing that thing that nobody actually cares about or knows about. Well, there you go. That's it right there. That's the seed with which these decisions get made. So that's one piece. The second piece, though, is that the reason they do it the way they do it is because that's the best way to strangle a fight. It's a tactic. It's a specific tactic to avoid confrontation. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to know about who they're. They just want to cut that thing off, and they want to be done with it. They're going to throw it in the trash, even if it could have been recycled. Nobody cares. They're going to try to get past it as quick as possible. And so a lot of this is about the fear of activism, frankly, from people that are being fired or the customers that are being harmed as a result of this, right? So this is what our whole show is about.
Right.
Somewhat.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You talk about a couple things. You talk about they throw it in the trash. Literally, Starbucks threw it in the trash, because I drove by my Starbucks that I go to Sunday afternoon, and the dumpster area was completely full, including mops and buckets and, stuff that probably could have been salvaged. And all of this is in the dumpster. I mean, they literally tossed it in the
Throw
garbage.
it away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I drove by another one that had been closed, and they still had the umbrellas out. I'm sure somebody was going to drive by and claim those, So yeah, talking about throwing it in the trash, they literally threw it in the trash. And I think the other piece, this activism piece, we certainly saw it with the school, because what it did is it immediately mobilized the community, the parents, the parishioners, the staff. It mobilized that community to say, wait a minute, we need to pause, because the way this is being presented is entirely negative. But there's a whole nother positive side of this that's never been presented. And fortunately, the board allowed that to happen. The board allowed this appeal process. And last Thursday night, the parents and the staff and the community came together. Almost 500 or 600 people came out to support this. And they had, I think, about 8 or 9 speakers that were mostly parents or staff that presented the positive side of this, and it was overwhelmingly powerful. I mean, it really got to this, this is the human toll that you're exacting on this, but also this is the positive side of things that you're not looking at. And fortunately now they're considering, we won't know for another week and a half or so, but they're at least considering to hit the pause button on this and really think about what can we do to allow this community to mobilize and do what they need to do to keep the school going. So I will at least give the leaders that grace, and at least they are considering it. But again, we won't know for another week and a half. So, but it really is this idea of when these kinds of decisions are made, and if we look at it from a Benedictine perspective, which of course I do, you've got this idea of stability and community, these principles of stability and community that really says, first off, community is vital. And if we don't have good community, then the rest of this stuff doesn't work. So if you think about it from a standpoint of whether it's Starbucks or anybody else that announces these closings and does them so abruptly, the impact that it's having on those people that are still in the business, in the organization. And even with our school, when they made this decision, we started hearing from all the other, and there are 5 other elementary schools in our city, Catholic elementary schools in our city. We started hearing from those people saying, well, if they did it to you guys, now they can do it to us, as well as Starbucks employees saying, well, if you did that to these guys, we're probably next. And you think about the morale and the impact that has on creating a positive environment that's going to allow the business or the organization to thrive. Yeah, there's a financial aspect of it. There's no question about that. But how you do these things through transparency, through extensive communication, through empathy and understanding that there is a human toll here, I think is really vital. And I know, Steve, you've seen some of these things happen in the music industry.
I mean, you got me wanting to go lay down for a bit and just conversation. First of all, I love how you said they put a stranglehold on it. I've never thought about that, Randy, and it makes sense because they're not only putting you on the defense, they're putting you there in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes left on the clock, and they've had the ball the entire game.
Yeah.
And there's almost no way to catch up. You can forget it. Like it's not that's
Why
the
you
game.
play?
Huh? What'd
Why
you say?
even play? Yeah, you should just leave.
Why are you playing? But
Right.
because you fight, because that's our, you're fighting for what you know is right. There's ways of doing things, I think, and there's ways not. But I understand what you said. They're trying to make it as easy on themselves as possible. The problem is you got to think about all the other people it affects, not just your employees, not just a customer that's used to doing things and that's probably developed great relationships with these people that work there. Not just them, but what about the families and everybody that it involves is vast in a lot of ways. So to put it in my perspective, we had I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday, Waiting on Joe were out, and the videos were number one, and Monday was the top two record, that's number two, and Waiting on Joe was in the low 20s, I think, maybe top 20. It's been so long. Anyway, we were going through all of this, and we find out, so I was on Mercury, so that was me and Shania, and at the point, Toby Keith, the rest of his soul, but he had moved on to DreamWorks, but we found out, and then MCA was George Strait, Reba McEntire, Vince Gill, that list. We all find out at one time, I'm about to go on stage. And when I find out is at night before I go on stage, and we had been on this CMT tour, me and Paisley and the Rascal Flatts. The three of us had pretty much toured the country. I think we had like 20 shows around the country, and they were calling us the three, that were coming. And Keith Urban obviously was in that mix, and we were all sort of sharing the stage, but it was mostly the three of us on this one tour. And my promotion guy tells me right before I go on, the plan was for me to have 4 more singles because everything was working out. And so I'm planning about the future for my band, the future for their families, the future for everybody, knowing I'm going to go 6 deep on one album. And also I have time. I'm planning my next album when I know I have to write it. I've got 150 shows on the books, and everything that I'm thinking about is timing for the future and being prepared for the next album, not stumbling, not slowing down, because in my mind, I've got everybody in my family, everybody on my mind, and it felt really good to be in that position and to know that I'm about to really matter for a lot of folks and who I love. And when I found out, they told me right before I went on stage that we're being bought, and it was a French guy, Vivendi, I think was who was, that owned us, and he ends up selling to Universal, but they say, your record's done. Go make another album. We'll let you know when it's time. So they shut me all the way down and shut everybody all the way down on the label. But I was the one that was the hottest at the time. And I had all the momentum. And I remember going out on stage and trying to look at my bandmates and trying to think, and I was dizzy. I don't remember singing a song. I don't remember saying a word. I just remember getting in bed and basically getting out of bed for days. And my wife was looking at me, you have to step it up now. You got to get up. And I made my decision. I was leaving. I wasn't going to stay there because this guy that ran things, he loved to choke you, what you just said. He lived for the moment of having that opportunity to do that. He liked to do it himself, and he liked to put other people on it to do it. So he wasn't, passing the buck to everybody. He enjoyed it himself. Eventually, Universal would buy us, and I watched him fire people after people after people that we were working with that were valuable to us, continuing after we got to get started again, which was like 9 months to a year later, momentum's gone. And then everybody he brought in, that we were working with and spending 6 months, he would fire. It was like we started over and over, but there was never a warning. And you can imagine the toll, the human toll it took on all of us. And I was more concerning about my kids and my wife and my band and their families and the bus driver and his family, everybody that we had promised all, here we go.
Yeah.
And now here we don't. And it was just the way they did it. But you've just explained a lot to me in that one sentence, Randy, that I probably didn't comprehend. And there was no defending it. Even though we had the best defense in the world, we didn't have time, nor the place, nor the venue to state our defense.
So we can think for just a minute about what would it look like if they tried to do whatever that was they did the right way. What's the right way to do that? And there's one case study that I think is worth bringing up briefly, and that was the CEO of Nokia, a guy named Stephen Elop. And I believe it was, looking at my computer right now, I think it was like 2010 or 2011. And if you remember, Nokia at the time was just lost. That Nokia ruled the world of mobile phones there for a good while when they were emergent, and then they got steamrolled by Apple and others. And so It's 2011. Nokia, though, is still a very major player globally. And Stephen Elop writes to every employee and sends it out on one day. And this is the opening sentence of that email. It's the opening sentence is, a man wakes up to find his oil platform engulfed in flames. He must choose between certain death by fire or a risky leap into freezing waters. He jumps because staying means death. That's the first paragraph of the and so there's this metaphor he introduces of the burning platform. It's a classic strategic metaphor. It basically says, we've got no choice here. This is not about what should we do, maybe if we fix that, or maybe we could grow this, or what if we all wore hats or whatever. None of that. This is about it's on, it's done, it's gonna happen. And so he goes through and he says, he basically says, we are going to restructure everything. Everything is going to change. It's going to change swiftly and blah, 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 blah. And depending on which business school you go to, they're going to debate whether he was effective in that or not. But the fact is, Nokia is still the thing. And they're now working in the background of a whole lot of electronics. And at some level, we could credit him with seizing the moment of realizing his company is about to die and sort of resurrecting it. So there's an example of somebody who's trying to do it, but that was a poop storm that came from that memo, because he had like 50,000 employees. So all of a sudden everybody's like, what? All over the world. And yet what would you have him do? Right. And at this point, the people on the inside, we've had all the little meetings saying, hey, we've got to hit our quarterly numbers, or, oh, we need to do innovation, or whatever it is. And when that stuff just doesn't bubble up, the big button has to be pressed sometimes. And the question is, how do you do that well? I think that there are some things we can talk about that are just generally good principles. Oh, Benedictine principles would jump into this, because it's about being a good human.
Exactly.
Most of us can take tough stuff, right? We can handle a punch, but we need to understand the why. Why did this happen?
Yeah, and let us know you're about to punch us so we can prepare ourselves to cover up and prepare ourselves for taking care of everybody we need to take care of. Give us a little notice. There was a way to do this. Let's talk Starbucks. And I asked Mike this morning, I said, am I missing something? Am I only seeing one side of the story? Did they let them know? And it sounds like they didn't let them know like they needed to. To me, and let's get to the real facts of the Benedictine way, which is a lot better than my principles and what I understand. But just the human heart tells me, okay, everybody, send a notice out. There's a good chance we're going to be closing down hundreds of stores. Yours could be affected. We're going to try to keep you posted on who you might be, but you might want to start looking for work. But what they don't want to do is people to leave and them not be able to make the extra 2 weeks of money, whatever $1 they're going to make. That to me is just total selfishness and not thinking about these employees who you claim love to be there because of the way you treat them.
Right.
Well, you can't talk about the way you treat them anymore.
Right. And it's interesting, especially with Starbucks. Yeah, with Starbucks Starbucks has been a wonderful, wonderful business story, but at COVID and after COVID, they lost their way. They really forgot what their purpose was, and Howard Schultz, when he started that company, the idea was to create an environment that he'd seen in Paris with all these coffee shops and people sitting around for 2 hours drinking coffee and chatting, and that's the environment that he tried to create with Starbucks, and he was extremely successful at it up until COVID. And then it changed. Then it changed dramatically. And they went away from that idea. They went away from that experience and became just another commodity coffee place that there's a million of them. And
why? You answer why?
Well, I think at that point, the answer was they felt like because people didn't want to come back and be together because of COVID, that they were going to have to do that, Now, in reality, I think that once we got a year, 2 years past COVID, people, I think, longed to come back together. And where I think they had an opportunity to capitalize was to jump on that immediately. Well, now the new CEO has finally come back in the last 6 months or so and said, yeah, we need to recapture that. But unfortunately, what he's doing is he's creating, by closing 400 stores and laying these people off, or not even laying them off, basically firing them with 48 hours notice, is that he's created this environment where now the people that are going to still stick around aren't going to buy into that purpose. I mean, I walked into another Starbucks this morning, And all I saw were grumpy people that couldn't even say good morning or hello to you when you walked in the
Yeah.
store. And that's the environment that's been created. And so I think when we talk about the Benedictine principles, Benedict says that you should give everyone a seat at the table, that the input from the young monks and the new monks are just as valuable as those monks that have been there forever, and that they want that input. And I think there's a great, Randy, you talk about a case study. There's another case study out there, DTE Energy out of Michigan. Back in 2009, because of the financial crisis, they faced a huge crisis because they were losing money hand over fist, and they were going to lay off, I think, several thousand people. And the CEO at that time made a conscious decision that I'm not going to lay off anybody, and we're going to give people an opportunity to figure out how we make this work.
Yep.
And what they began to do is they looked at their time off, their PTO time and their vacation time and that kind of stuff, and people started cashing that in to save the company. And if somebody had a situation where they absolutely had to take a vacation or take PTO time, they traded it with somebody that didn't need it. And so the financial impact was significant. And literally within, I believe, a year, they saw a significant turnaround in the financial situation of the company because they got everybody involved. They got
Yeah.
everybody a seat at the table and allowed
Yes.
everybody to come up with a solution that
That's
was going to
exactly
work.
right. And Michigan is the right place to tell that story. Michigan has more stories about unions being at, fisticuffs with management. And yet, because of some bold work by both union leaders and management, all of a sudden they get back together and they find ways to solve problems. And I'm thinking of Frigidaire and Maytag and those kind of companies that were about to just really completely fall apart. And because of union and management interaction and engagement, they figured out there's a different way to do it. We could solve this problem. And so here's what that sounds like in the boardroom. Well, the union's never going to buy off on this, and we're going to have to pay them. We can't pay them their fee, and so they're going to be upset. So they're going to go on strike.
Right.
We may as well just close the plant.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's what they do. And then they go to the union and say, we're going to close the plant. Then the union's like, well, we're going to go and burn your house down. So let's work that out. And I've talked to people that literally had to go into these meetings with security, had to have police escorts or others because there was so much going on. But when the unions would often go, no, we would be happy to work with you on this if we understand what the problem is. Now that's not
Right.
always true. I'm going to,
Yep.
for sure. But when the opportunity for people to be a part of a solution comes along, it's remarkable how often that can actually take place. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and we saw that in our little Catholic school last week when the board allowed the parents to come back and say, we have some ideas, and it was an incredibly positive experience, and it's kind of funny because a Catholic school, you wouldn't necessarily think that there was going to be violence involved, but apparently the board was a little bit concerned, so they had police presence show up to
There
this
you go.
thing. So the way this thing started is that the entire crowd starts out in the parking lot saying the rosary. Not going to be a lot of violence coming out of a rosary, guys. And the approach was extremely positive. It was, everybody just really wanted to talk about the beauty of this school, the beauty of the community, and how we can come together to keep it vibrant and flourishing and that kind of thing. And so you're right. You see that. I just looked up the DTE case study. In 2009, they faced this crisis. In 2010, they had the best financial year they'd ever had. So there it is.
There you go. Well, and so this is what happens with decentralized decision making. So, you start looking at the macro level picture of your business, and all of a sudden 400 stores, when to your point, they probably have, I don't know how many stores, but we can look it up, but
Yeah.
tens of thousands of stores, I'm guessing.
Right.
When you're in Seattle and there's one on every corner of the same intersection,
Yeah.
here's your sign. But in Seattle, they're closing all of their elite roaster, some of their very swanky stores. have
Really?
all shut down.
Okay.
And they got the same no notice.
Yep.
One of those stores,
786 stores in the United States. Globally, Starbucks has 32,000 stores in 80 countries.
there you
Yeah.
go. So 400, drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
But they don't see those employees and their families and what they're responsible for with the
Right.
way that they handled it.
That's
So,
right.
just throwing them out to the wolves. They've got bills to pay next week.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Well, I'm sorry. I need to wait a minute, real quick, y'all. What am I need to shut up and listen. I'm doing it. Go ahead, Randy. I'm sorry. You were on a roll.
No. I'm just saying that it is that feeling of this is what they're thinking in the border. We could have closed 1,000 stores, and we probably should have, but we've got these 600 stores that are on the bubble that we're going to look at. So they may see it as, look how magnanimous we have been by
Right.
only closing 400 stores, because
Right.
we're
Right.
the coffee prices are going up, and we have infrastructure and supply chain, blah blah blah. I was just reading that because of tariffs and other things, now people are hijacking trucks left and right, and security for truckers has never been worse in this country because the value of what's in there, you can't get that stuff now or whatever. So it's
Sure.
just crazy pants out there, and they're praying the rosary. They got police at the Catholic school. Well, you know what? I would think that's a smart idea these days, because
Yeah, we have a police officer in our church. It's
Yeah.
it's what it is now, and especially now more than ever. Yeah, what are you going to do? I just feel like Starbucks had this reputation. It was about what we talked about in earlier episodes: relationships.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
building. They had a relationship with their bosses and Starbucks in general, and they depended and counted on that relationship to always be tried and true, and those values to override anything beyond that. And then the relationships they build with customers like Mike, who's there all the
Right.
time. I mean, I'm in Greenville, Mississippi, and we don't have Starbucks.
Yeah.
But I've got better coffee just in the kitchen over there. You can get me started. I grind we grind our own beans. I can't fix the machine. Glenn can, which is a little odd, right? But with that said, how they handled it was everything against the principle that we all knew that they have been. And think about how those employees are feeling when they had walked up to you with the biggest smile because they're being treated well.
Right.
So they're passing on that treatment to the customer.
Right.
Which is,
Right.
what is it, Mike? Say it. 2 words. What is it?
Profound hospitality.
Hospitality.
You
There
got
you
it.
go.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I had built such a relationship with these people. They knew when our podcast was coming out. I think the whole store listened to our podcast, when it came out. There was one of the gals is pregnant, so I was constantly checking to see how she's doing, and her baby is due almost around my birthday. So I kept telling her that November 22nd would be a really good day to have that baby. But
Well,
you develop those relationships.
it allowed you to have those conversations, but it all started, like you said, Randy, with the way that they built their business from being in France and watching that unfold, people hanging out. You know why they're hanging out? Not because they just want coffee and not
Right.
just because they can, because they love the environment. It felt homey. It felt
Exactly.
like you belonged there, and it was inviting and warm. And now that culture has got a crack in it now.
Yeah.
And unless they fix that, this to me is a big blow to everything that they've ever stood for.
Right. I don't think there's any question.
And it does speak to the challenge of, I'm thinking about your daughter, Steve. And so here you've got this bright chef, Michelin star thinking person working successfully. But there's a reason.
She's making her way up the chain.
There's only a few Michelin star
Just have
restaurants
some
in the
people
world,
in
right?
you.
I mean, I guess
Come
what
on.
I'm trying to say is that when do you hit the edges of what can really scale?
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm
in
sorry.
other words, how many Starbucks can you have before you lose the Starbucks, what it was actually supposed to be in the first place, right? How many Sears stores can you have before Sears all of a sudden becomes something that doesn't live up to what my father
Right.
Sears was? My father trusted Sears
Right.
deeply. And for me, Sears was just a big old box store that didn't give two hoots about anybody,
Right.
when in the mall days. But this is
Was it
about how do you
Mm.
build a business that when it gets so big, you really can't be in the business anymore. Can the band be so good, be so popular that they lose their way? And
No, you cannot lose your way. Don't bring me up. Don't bring us up. We do not lose our way. We live for it. Now, I'll tell you what, let me just say this. I get it. You deal with more adversity with everybody continuing to get along, especially when you're in a capsule running down the road in a 40-foot bus, right? I mean, everybody has to really get along, and that's basically almost impossible, right? So you have to, you're in a big house or a bigger house than a bus, unless you live in a trailer somewhere, which some people do. But you can imagine space can become important for some people. And relationships can be tarnished a little bit or be tested. That's for sure. But musically, man, I'm telling you, I feel very blessed. My guys are. I have to step in every once in a while and hug them all and bring them together. But all in all, it's been pretty beautiful. I don't think any of the guys nor me would call them and go, "We're done," without giving them some sort of warning. And we're doing shows with people now we depend on, and a lot of people. We're employing 60 people with some businesses that we're working with. I just believe in my heart, because of the relationships that we built and the communication that we have, the folks we're working with would never do that. Knock on wood, all that. But they have given me enough confidence.
I'm thinking about BB King right now. So
Yeah.
you've got BB King who cannot stand up on stage, and he is playing. Now, clearly, he obviously loved playing.
Woo! Nobody loved it more.
But at the same time, holy smokes, all the interviews I'm seeing are like him saying, if I stop playing, 1,000 people go hungry,
Oh, he believed that. He knew that. And that's why I know he had a love affair for playing it, and we're celebrating BB King's 100th birthday. Incredible museum down the road here.
It is incredible. If you've not been to that museum, go to that museum. It is fantastic.
It's just in Indianola. It's incredible. And Club Ebony, right next door to it, where he met his second wife, is Sue. I mean, there's so much history there when you're talking about the king of the blues. But with that said, he would have never, ever, nor did he. And guess what? He had a pretty long life, and a pretty good body of work to show that wasn't the way to shut it down.
Yeah.
You had to put him in his grave to shut it down.
Yeah, Willie Nelson's another example, right?
Right.
The only guy we can think about are the Rolling Stones, obviously, but Willie tours arguably as much consistently as BB did.
Yeah.
They are the two guys that they just don't come off a tour. They just tour.
They're just always out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm reminded of the song by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Partners, Brothers, and Friends. That's what sounds like your bus, Steve.
I remember meeting those guys, and one of the lead singers was really so talented. And I looked at him playing golf with him, and I go, how old are you? How old are you? And he was like 20 something years older. He looked younger than all of us. I said, I want some of that.
Yeah.
Life's been treating you pretty dang good. Really good guys. Great song, by the way. Great song.
Yeah.
I always look out for people who are what I call toxically positive. And what I mean by that is they will look at a crappy situation and tell you why it's really okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're okay. They're fine. I know they're hurting right now, but they'll be all right. That kind of stuff. Or, we're going to have to, I know you guys want 2 more people in your, in that part of your organization because you're so backed up, but we just can't pull that out of the budget right now. So you guys are just going to have to suck it up. And I know it's kind of tough, but you'll be okay. And hey, we're going to have a pizza party for you next week or something like that. Those people drive me nuts because what they're doing is they're sweeping all this stuff under the rug. And everybody that's there knows this is not going to end well. It is just a matter of time before this fundamentally breaks.
Randy, these people didn't have a matter of time.
Right. That's exactly right.
In that situation, you can't necessarily be, what's the 2 words you put together that I've never heard together? What? Positive? What?
Positive.
Toxicity. Yeah.
Positive
positivity.
Positive toxicity.
Yep. Those 2 words should never be allowed to even be in.
No, but it's true. And it's the same thing now. Come on now.
Professor to give us a new word, Steve.
It's like
I'm learning. I'm learning as I go.
It's good Southern talk. It happens all the time. Well, don't you just look sweet, or don't you just look fine?
Darling.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. Look what you did to your hair. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, that's so cool. What the funny thing is? I love it. We were listening to somebody the other day. I heard Gwen listen to this. I overheard it, and it was talking about all the, you ask somebody something, and how are you doing and all that. You really don't want an answer.
No, you don't. No.
They tell you things bad. You're like, either you never want to hear that because you don't have a reply.
Well, and this is why your point is so important, Steve, because what happened at Mike's school meeting was those people that made that decision actually saw faces and names and people, children, and you could not look away from that relationship. All of a sudden, the humanity of this really came into focus.
Yeah.
And they couldn't walk away from it.
Yeah, we talk about that idea of the human toll. They saw it. They saw it on the faces. They saw it in the people that were there. They saw, and it was really cool. I mean, somebody came up with the idea to do T-shirts, and the entire arena had T-shirts on, the same T-shirts on that they had created for this movement. And I think that's one of the things when we think about how do we create positive organizations, the best way to create a positive organization is to create a movement within it. And it's creating that movement from the bottom up. It's getting people engaged. It's getting people involved. One of my favorite guys in case studies and writers is Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry Waymiller. And he really talks about this idea of when we begin to give people the opportunity to make decisions themselves. And it's this idea, that another one of my favorite words coming from Catholic social teaching, the idea of subsidiarity.
Whoa,
Subsidiarity.
That's a
Yeah,
good one.
subsidiarity
I'm
meaning
gonna rock that word.
that we allow the decisions to be made at the lowest common denominator. And when those things happen, when people are engaged to be able to do that, you see amazing things happen. And Barry Waymiller is one of the greatest examples of how that works.
Let
Fantastic.
me just say this: if that was in a song, it would be subsidiarity. Wait a minute, is that the word subsidiarity?
Subsidiarity. Yep.
Subsidiarity.
Ready.
Subsidiarity. Okay, I'm just thinking. You sing it like you say it. Baby. You sing it like you say it.
You're so pretty.
I
You're
think
pretty
another
subsidiarity.
couple of months. In another couple of months, we're going to challenge Steve to write a song with all the new words he's learned.
Oh, I love it.
Discernment. I got some words. And you know what the funny thing is? I heard one of our words, discernment, which, looking back, I recall that word, but not in the context and the way you guys were using it. It sounded brand new to me. And I heard somebody talk about it the other day, and I went, "No, wait, I'm a pro
This
at
is the
this."
word of social media. Because you got to have some discernment, man. You start looking at anything online and you got to first
That's
ask the
exactly
question,
right.
is this real? Where did this come
Yeah.
from? What is the story here?
Subsidiarity is the new word for me.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to say that one of the reasons, though, that all of this goes to crap so often is just because of good old fashioned, straight up greed. This
Yeah.
is about people that are investors these are
Yep.
the stockholders that are going to go to the quarterly meeting, and they're going to say, you didn't meet your numbers last quarter. So you better meet your numbers, or I'm going to be an activist stockholder and I'm going to cause trouble on the board. And then there's going to be big trouble. And
Right.
that's where this comes from. I want my money now. Yes, it
Mhm.
might be better if we let it grow for another 3 years, because then we'd have all these other opportunities. But I want my money now, by gosh, and I'm going to get it. And that decision to separate myself from the company. I'm no longer a stockholder of the company where I'm proud of the company and I want the company to grow.
Yeah.
No, I want mine now. And so it's that attitude that ends up really being kind of a Tanya Harding whack to the knee for companies that are really trying to grow, because they can't build. It's one of the reasons I love credit unions, because credit unions don't have that problem. They're a not-for-profit, which means there's no quarterly profit result. They still
Right.
have to be successful, but there's nobody that can come in and say, I'm going to shut this down because I want your quarterly profits to be so-and-so. And so credit unions have the opportunity to just grow.
Right.
And that pisses off banks, but it's like, hello, friends, you could do the same thing if you would
Right.
allow the business to grow more organically and over a decade, instead of
Yep.
trying to build a bank successful 3 years, cash out, baby.
Wow.
Get a new jet ski.
I've been in your room with Alabama Credit Union, and I understand what you mean. I'm glad I got to see that camaraderie. And I've been at the school just recently with
Right.
Mike, beautiful kids, and how the teachers were so all in. I mean, you can tell when teachers are
Yeah.
all in. The
Yep.
principal, and how much there was just a big freaking umbrella of love over the top of everybody who were in this room. So I feel a little vested
Yes.
there. And also we've had to deal with it within our own confounds at St. Joe and Greenville. We've, when we were gone, my buddies built a really beautiful school, and it was expensive. And they just had constant struggles. And thank goodness we inherited quite a bit of money from one of the first graduates ever that never got married and left his money to us. And then that was another can of worms we had to deal with. But the bottom line is, I understand that. But being there and seeing those kids, well, you know what they're thinking, Mike? They're thinking, hey, they'll just be able to go to another school. What's the big deal? And
Right.
guess what, Starbucks? You'll go get another job
Yeah.
somewhere else. What's the big
Right.
deal? That's how they're able to feel
That's
good
exactly
about
right.
what's going.
That's
and-
exactly right.
When they're ripping not the Band-Aid off, they're ripping duct tape off of a very hairy arm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
little-
Exactly.
Little
Yeah.
thing. stuff that's going to rip it all off. That's
Yeah.
what they're doing. And there's a way not to do that, I feel, with compassion that allows everybody a second to be able to figure out what they need to do to be able to get through the next month of their life. Because
Yeah.
that's who they're dealing with, and that's just not right. And so, Mike, can I ask you something? When they shut the school down, are they going to shut it down tomorrow, or are they going to shut it down at the end of the year? Or is that
End of the year. Yeah. End of the year. Yeah. But some of the things, yeah, some of the things, and I won't go into the gory details, but some of the things that they were requesting parents to do literally were going to have to happen within 2 to 3 weeks. And so they weren't going to give them a lot of time to, to figure out, okay, what's the next steps? So I think, the good news is I think it's being reconsidered. So, from that aspect, at least we are seeing them listen with the ear of their heart. Since
now?
that meeting last Thursday. And I think really that kind of, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I have an important question right now. So easy for kids to go to other schools, but are there waiting lists at these other schools?
Well, and that's the other piece of it, that there is not a place for all these kids.
That's what, there you go.
Yeah.
Doesn't
And so that's the other challenge of this. So, but anyhow, well, what we've been talking about today is the human toll of leadership decisions. Randy, give us a couple of nuggets to wrap us up here today.
Well, I really feel like the first thing we can realize is that our economy and our culture is in more transformative change than I've ever experienced in my life. Literally every single element of our culture is changing. Healthcare, medicine, religion, certainly education, retail, you name it, everything is changing. And so we all have to brace for the fact that what we think has happened in the past, we can't just take it and push it forward and say, oh, therefore I can agree with this. In other words, if you are working at Starbucks, you should take a lesson from this that says this job might go away. We've now got proof that this job that is not now it's good, but it could go away. So there's the need for contingency in our culture. We need to have plan B and plan C. And that's stressful. The other thing is that the people that were fired are, to your point, they're not sitting on big savings accounts. So we need to be more helpful in our communities. And we need to be there for people who were doing the right thing. And this is what's so important to me as I've traveled around the country is there are people that have 2 jobs and they're below the poverty line. They have 2 jobs and they've got 1 kid and they're trying to take care of that kid the best they can. And that is a nightmare. So what can we do as a community to help as people fall off the bus? Because everything is changing, right?
Wow, it's going 80 miles an hour.
It's going 80 miles an hour. Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we want to point a finger at a corporation and say the humanity is not there, we need to point a finger at ourselves too and say, what are we doing in our community where we can make a difference? And we can ponder about what's going on in the big boardrooms all day long and hope that they wake up to the fact that long term is better than short term quick gains.
Right. Yeah. I know.
Mike, take us home, Mike, you want to take us home?
Yeah, I know Simon Sinek talks about that in his book, The Infinite Game, and really understanding that the long view versus the short view in the long run will be much more successful. So, all right. Well, with that, guys, let's wrap it up for another episode. And again, for those of you that maybe are joining us for the first time, thanks for joining us. We love that you're with us here. You can find us on all of the major platforms. And when you listen to us, make sure that you're giving us a thumbs up or a comment or something that gives us some affirmation that we want to keep doing this. So
if you've got specific problems or questions or concerns, we'd love to hear them. Wouldn't mind getting on a call with you. So
absolutely.
If you think that there's something that we might be able to help with.
Yeah.
ResidenceLeader.com, right? ResidenceLeader.com.
ResidenceLeader.com. Again, when you go to that webpage, you'll find all the links to all the major platforms that you can find us at, as well as the link to the YouTube channel if you want to watch the video rather than just listening to the audio. So with that, guys, we will see you on the next episode, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Take care, good friends.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.